Hi everyone, I'm Sura. I'm here at the beautiful Shivananda Yoga Center in Paradise Island, Bahamas. And I'm here to do some yoga, to relax and unwind. And I found out that Dan Millman is going to be here. Dan is a best-selling author of 17 books, including The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, that was also made into a feature film starring Nick Nolte. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining me today.
Good to be here with you.
Can you tell me a little bit about the retreat that you're hosting here this week?
Well, I can only do it in context of teaching around the world. I've been at many different kinds of venues, and it's beautiful here at the yoga retreat. So I enjoy meeting with groups of yogis and other interested people in life's bigger picture.
Thank you, Dan. I'd love to talk about your book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. How closely does this book parallel your own life's journey and your own spiritual awakening? And can you talk a little bit about Socrates?
Sure. First of all, Way of the Peaceful Warrior was my first book of 17 books, and it became my signature book, the best known one. And in 2007, Universal Pictures released a film based on the book.
I don't know what to do now.
Everything has a purpose, even this. And it's up to you to find it.
The book was based on my life, and it's based on autobiographical material, things that happened to me, including meeting in December of some years ago an old service station attendant who reminded me of the old Greek sage, so I ended up calling him Socrates. He's played by Nick Nolte in the movie version of it, and he taught me about life's bigger picture. I was a successful young athlete, had plenty of dates, and my grades were good at that time, so I thought I was on top of the world, you know, the hubris of youth. I thought I was just totally successful, but then in contrast to him, there was something about him that was non-serious, humorous in the sense of not just taking himself so seriously, a relaxed way of approaching life. Many people seem to resonate with that spiritual journey that I took with him, from a self-absorbed young athlete to someone who is just more self-aware.
I was going to ask you about the accident that you underwent and how you dealt with that and how you were able to use these spiritual principles to help you move through that.
Well, I was a young man. I was 20 years old when I shattered my right leg in a motorcycle crash, as depicted in the Peaceful Warrior movie and in my book. And that was quite accurate in terms of how it was portrayed. I have to acknowledge that many people have been injured far more severely than a broken leg, even though it was a badly broken leg. Still, it shook me up. I was about to go to the World Gymnastics Championships as a potential Olympian. I was being sent there, and it was right in the peak of my career, and the doctor told me I probably might walk okay again with work, but I wouldn't do gymnastics again. And I'd been training in my life goal, so it was quite dislocating in my life. Now, I was too young then to really understand how to respond to that. But I do remember doing push-ups in my hospital bed before I even left the hospital, and I just trained. I had no idea whether I'd ever come back, but I just
What was that
kept
about, the
training.
push-ups?
Well, it was what I could do. I was starting to get back. It was all about coming back. And I did indeed come back, and my team, I led my team to the national championships in gymnastics, as described more accurately in the book, somewhat dramatically in the movie. But I was able to do that. Not everyone can come back from certain injuries. It's based on a principle, a realistic principle, that we can control our efforts in life. We can't control the outcomes, but by making a good effort over time, we increase the odds of getting the desired outcome over not making the effort. Or as the hockey player Wayne Gretzky once said, we make 0% of the shots we don't take.
Dan, what do you define as faith?
Faith, F-A-I-T-H. I'm glad you asked that, because I have a definition that is fairly original. I think it's worth considering. For me, faith does not rely on belief. Many people, they have to believe in this or believe in that to have faith. But our beliefs in very difficult times may not sustain themselves. To me, faith is the courage to live as if everything that happens is for our highest good and learning. And I'm going to say that again. Faith is the courage to live as if everything that happens is for our highest good and learning. Now, it doesn't make it effortless when we have a sudden loss or dislocation in our life, a change that maybe wasn't so welcome, when we realize we're not entirely in control of our life. When that happens, we naturally will feel whatever feelings we feel. When we lose a loved one, we're going to grieve. That's quite natural. Yet, we can cling to the thread of that kind of faith, the courage to live as if everything that happens somehow is going to be for our highest good and learning. Anyone who has experienced physical, emotional, or mental pain in their life can look back on that and notice they're a little wiser now, a little stronger now, and maybe even have a different sense of perspective. So in that sense, everything, adversity, is a form of spiritual weightlifting to strengthen our spirits.
Dan, can you tell me about your new book that you've just come out with your daughter, Sierra, The Creative Compass?
Thank you. It's very close to my heart. It covers two basic elements. The subtitle of The Creative Compass is Writing Your Way from Inspiration to Publication. So it covers from the very beginning what we call the dream stage to the end stage of sharing our work with others. So it is for writers, but equally true, it's about the creative process, a 5-stage creative process.
What are some key points that you would like to share for other people who are aspiring writers who want to publish their own work? Well, because it is a very difficult process.
It is. Writing is easy, but writing well is difficult. And that's true for any aspect, any activity. And we have very practical approaches. There's a technique in the dream phase called dreaming and dialogue, which helps people to get started every day in their writing, but also to overcome inertia, so-called writer's block. And that's one method. There's another method.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Of course.
Dreaming and dialogue?
Yes. We borrowed the term from English professor and best-selling writer David Morrell, who does this dialogue with himself when, for example, he might write, "I have nothing to write," and he might type that out. And then his better part, his alter ego, might write in italics, "Well, have you ever run across this before?" And he might answer, "Well, actually, I have." "Well, what did you do then?" So this wiser part of himself, his inner
That reminds me of Conversations with God.
Or his inner Socrates. In other words, it's a universal method. Many people who say they channel wisdom from other beings, they're really using this method, consciously or not. And my own Socrates, even though he was based on a real man, he was my better, wiser part. So it's a way to bring out our inner wisdom.
Writing seems very therapeutic in that sense, and it takes you through a journey of transformation.
Yes.
Because you get to see what's really there for you.
There's a quote, we have hundreds of quotes in the book by master writers and other creative artists throughout the book, because nobody's smarter than all of us. And C. Day-Lewis, an English poet and essayist, the father of Daniel Day-Lewis, the actor actually, C. Day-Lewis once said, "I write not in order to be understood, I write in order to understand." So it is a therapeutic and a personal growth process, whether we write and journal just for ourselves or whether we write to share with other people. There's something very special about writing as there is about reading.
And Dan, I'd like to ask you too, how did you come to writing, and did you ever dream that The Way of the Peaceful Warrior would be as successful as it has been? Did you ever have a sense of that?
Absolutely not. And probably many writers would answer a similar way to their signature books. I really did write it from the heart. I had no idea if it would sell any copies, but there was something I needed to express. And that first book took me, it developed itself over about 7 years of life experience and also of working on something. I didn't know what it would be, but it shaped itself into Peaceful Warrior. It took my publisher a year or more to get the major book chains to take one copy in each store, but then something magic happened, and it's the only thing that can keep a book alive for as many decades as Peaceful Warrior has been alive, which is word of mouth. people would read the book and tell other people, you've got to read this. And when a book can capture that, when it can do something to touch people, and it just happened that my words in Peaceful Warrior somehow touched enough hearts and minds that it's still alive and doing very well even today.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm just going to close with a few more questions, which is, do you believe in God?
Well, I've been asked that before, and I usually answer that my beliefs are no more important than anyone else's. Beliefs come and go. There is a sense in moments of free attention that there is some kind of mystery, magic, presence in the world that is beyond each of us. Tonight I'm going to be discussing the two realities in which we live, because each of us has a yearning for the transcendent. So whether it's based in religious terms, such as God, whether it's based in Buddhistic terms, where there's no actual God, but there's this nirvana, satori, this realization, this awakening to reality. Life remains wondrous. Nature remains wondrous. We remain wondrous. So I hope I've, in a sophisticated way, dodged your question effectively. Because it doesn't matter what I believe or don't believe. It's how we live. That's what counts.
Yes, and ending with that, what would be a core message if you wanted to have one message to relay to the world? What would that be?
Stanislaw J. Lech was interred in a concentration camp during World War II when he wrote a book called Unkempt Thoughts. It's an old book, probably out of print, but I remember a quotation from that book. He said, "I wanted to tell the world just one word." Unable to do that, I became a writer. And I wrote 17 books, so it's hard to summarize all that. But if I had to, I would remind people, and that's all any teacher can do, is to remind people of what they know at deeper levels but tend to forget. I would remind them it's so important to trust your process, to trust yourself, and to trust the process of your life unfolding, that wherever we step, the path appears beneath our feet.
Dan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.